welcome to the first of what is the new Committee of Heritage and Town Events on Thursday, the 1st of July at 10 a.m. The first point of business is to elect a new chair for the mayoral year of 2021-2022. So, could I please invite nominations? And do we have a second? And do we have any other nominations? No? Committee all approved? Thank you very much. Can I invite James to take the chair?
Lovely. So in that case, thank you all very, very much for your confidence in me. I'd like to open the nominations therefore for Vice Chair, please. Do I have Councillor Hollis, please? I'd like to nominate Councillor Wright. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Thank you, Councillor Cannon. Are there any other proposals, please? All those in favour? Fantastic. That was well done, Stuart. Lovely to work with you again. So we'll move straight on to 13921, declarations of any disclosable pecuniary interest to receive any additional interest not already registered, please. Obviously, if anything should come up during the course of the meeting, feel free to signal and I'll do my best to pick up. We then move on to 14021, apologies for absence, to receive apologies. Chris, have we had any, please?
We've had two from Councillors Barreto and Buckley.
Okay, thank you very much. And moving swiftly on then on to 14121, the minutes of the last meeting, to confirm the minutes of the committee meeting held 8th of April, received by full council on the 27th of April as a true record. It's all of one page and 2 pages. Any questions, queries or comments regarding the validity, please? Lovely. All those in agreement with moving the minutes? Super. Thank you all very much. We'll then move swiftly on to 142, Heritage and Events Officer, to receive a verbal presentation. I can have that.
Thank you very much. So, firstly, I'd like to introduce the committee, if you haven't already met, Katie Wright, who is our new Heritage and Events Officer. And she's been employed for at least the next 2 years. Let's hope it's going to be successful. We go beyond that, but for the first 2 years, with funding from the successful NHLF grant. So part of her job is to deliver various different activities and events to achieve our outcomes that we set out in our application to the NHLF. So they are things like specialist markets, outreach activities surrounding the Guildhall stories of those pertinent characters that have been involved with the Guildhall or associated with the Guildhall over the last few centuries. To deliver a number of workshops and also to enhance our associations with the Sikh communities and through the themed rooms of the tea room, the large court, the council chamber and the upper gallery. So Katie has been with us a few weeks and she's been working really hard to kickstart all of those projects. So I'll just hand you over to Katie. She can take you through all the wonderful things she's got planned over the next couple of months.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Some of the first things I wanted to do was kind of get the Guildhall on the map, to bring people in, to show what kind of we've done with the building and also to kickstart heritage and community and the arts and kind of bring that kind of feel to it. So we're hoping from the 28th of July we will be open and we can start to kickstart things then. So I've set up a new writers group that I'm hoping that we will have lots of interest. It's kind of put a small call out on Facebook and one email to groups. So with the new writers group, what it will be is we will invite industry professionals. I've got a few professionals on board. I've got scriptwriter and playwright James McDermott, who is the script writer for EastEnders, who's also written a lot of plays for Stephen Fry, and who's done very big in kind of that theme. So he's been coming and do some free workshops for community to show people how to write, to look at creative writing, to look at novels. We've also got songwriters coming in to help kind of with the community to whether they want to write songs. We've got some poets coming in, which are local, to kind of do poetry workshops. So all these workshops will happen is, it will be once a month, these workshops will happen, and then hopefully that will kind of be a presentation at the end of kind of 3 or 4 months that we can hold in the guild to show community's work, new writing, songs, all of those kinds of things. And hopefully that will be an ongoing project that we can run within the guild too. Also, I've started, I want to start community choir on the same kind of basis that we have community people come in who would like singing. We can start community choir and get that up and running, and hopefully then perform at town events like the British Light Switch-On. We can do some towns, things like that, which would be really good. Also, we're hoping to do maybe a musical theatre evening just the other side of Christmas with that community choir as well. Also on every Wednesday morning, I'd like to run arts and crafts groups, which invite people in with teas and coffee and do different arts and crafts projects. So I've been speaking to Brenda about a project that we're doing for Separate in Bloom, where we're hoping to knit lots of flowers that we can kind of make displays around the town to make it very pretty, also that kind of Separate in Bloom week. And then also within, obviously, the heritage project, I was going to do an arts and crafts heritage project about the quote of the guild. So I'm going to get some quilters involved and lots of other arts and crafts. We just create some banners of the Henry Table, of the super siblings of the Kings, Thomas Paine, Williamson, so they can hang and do, but they'll all be kind of community-based outreach projects, so we can get lots of people involved. I've been in touch with schools, and they're really keen to work with us and make these projects happen as well. So with the Separate in Bloom one, we're going to send out packs to the schools so they can create a new class and send it back to us in the community in our displays, or they can use it outside their school as part of that bigger project. And then that brings me on to Heritage Week. So Heritage Week is going to be big for us, because it will be hopefully we've been open a few months. So I've planned lots of things in Heritage Week. So just a brief overview. We're going to have a heritage theatre for children on the first weekend, so they can come and learn about the folk of the Guildhall and the history of the Guildhall with the puppet. I'm going to organise a Guildhall sketches group, which is a project I run elsewhere that was really successful. We invite artists or anyone in the community to have the kind of like drawing. They can come in and have access to the Guildhall. We're also going to set up lots of heritage pieces, and we've got this lovely postcards and things between towns that they can draw influence off, and then they can go away, create a piece of artwork that we will then display in the gallery for a short period of time so people can see the work that we've created. Then I'm doing lots of research on kind of the assize reports and what happens in the assize reports. I'm in the process of the moment writing a piece called The Tales of the Hangman, which will be kind of real life thought cases from the assize report. So people can come in for an evening, have some drinks and listen to some immersive theatre about kind of the stories of the assize report. And then our final weekend of Heritage Week will be a play about Homes and Table, which will be on the marketplace. It will be a free event, so people can come and enjoy the beautiful love story of Homes and Table and kind of have an immersive experience and have to sit and enjoy the heritage. Before that as well, obviously, before Heritage Week, so in August, we are doing a Magic Tea Party. Magic Tea Productions is doing Alice in Wonderland in Gardens. It would be nice to go to kind of offer a Mad Hatter Tea Party, so people kind of have an experience, and then go down to the gardens and watch the beautiful theatre as well. So, that's a brief overview of the few things we've got coming up.
Can I also just add that when it was Ros Barnett, as you all know, she was the author of the original application that went into the NHLF, and there are some very specific things that we do have to deliver, one of which you'll see on the slide that says specialist food markets, or specialist markets in any case, and it says August to be confirmed. I can just confirm that the first one of those will be Sunday the 1st of August, and it's not just going to be food. We're going to go down that format that that we've tried and tested before, which is that night market format, although it won't be a night market, it will be afternoon. So it will be crafts, food and music, and that will be on Sunday the 1st of August. And then of course we've got another one planned for Christmas on Sunday the 12th of December. So hopefully there'll be 2 specialist markets that we can tick off for us and hopefully create something on a regular basis. So any questions?
Yeah. Welcome, Katie, and nice to see you playing running. From the Writers Group, can you ensure we talk to the library? Library are involved in certain groups in the multiple disciplines. Require the use of contact with the group, but also get on to the use of it. We have a team of groups there. Work Craft group, right. Is there any thoughts of extending that craft group to potentially the one or once a month being within the group or in the market?
Yeah, definitely. I was speaking to someone about that yesterday and kind of giving people some skills to be able to maybe then have market to be able to sell the things that they've made or to even showcase the things that they've made within those kind of and also to empower people to realise that they can create and they can do something with it.
Well, it's a good thing for people to work.
Councillor Brown.
Okay. Yeah, I must have said that absolutely agreement. I'm very clear with the results. I know that the first one every child, every learning, and then sort of there might be ways to get in touch with them because they are very for the proposal or the process before that time. And I thought I was also wondering to see that giving back to you work hard and ideas
Yeah, it's definitely not clear. There's a lot of things.
Yes,
Just coming back on it's real great for we need to get every day to people to
Yeah.
thank us for the way volunteer her services to put up posters in favour of people to provide half of it. I'm sure that to the community outlets too. And also things that we manage to do this to
Yeah,
we don't want to be criticised because we're not there to make
no, I've sent all of my Facebook columns so you know what's going on, and also we try to identify those groups in towns that sometimes do either missed or that are bespoke to these. So I put like a tiny post on Facebook just kind of saying, listen to new writers, listen to listeners and quality things, and listen to songwriters, listen. I've put kind of just little drip feeds, I've put like a couple out a week. So we've had a really good response. So obviously they've now gone into kind of my boxes to say, right, as soon as we can cross there, and also they were also then saying, well, this person might be interesting, this person might be interesting. We've had a lot of tags on Facebook, so yeah, just finding those other groups that obviously don't use social media that I'm interested to do.
And it's also important to realise that it's not just about advertising within the town, but advertising outside the town in the immediate surrounding area. And the team have done a lot of work recently in trying to get involved with or get approved by other towns forums, and lots of them have accepted our application to post on there, which is good news. But also Katie has gone into a lot of theatre groups and things, so I know there are local theatre agencies and things like that that are now posting out the fact that we're doing Hansel and Gretel and the Time Traveller and all these other immersive theatre events. So I think the future is quite bright. The big thing that hangs over us like a cloud is that we do have to have the restrictions lifted. It looks like it's gonna happen, which we're all thankful of. So I think you can really then start implementing these kind of activities. And hopefully it will be a place where people want to come and enjoy.
And then, of course, it's just gone out regarding the Time Traveller, for those that may have missed it. What are the dates on that one?
That is the 5th of October.
Get a chance to look at their website, it looks amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And we've got Hansel and Gretel as well, which is a children's show, because he's coming in October half term. So that would be a nice thing for younger children.
Any further questions on the episode? In that case, welcome aboard, Katie. This is going to be a fun ride. Thank you very much. If we move on to 14321 Town Events 2022, and this is to discuss the forward planning of events in 2022. As we'd agreed previously last year, but then obviously it had to be scaled back. We aim to set 4 town events each year. In the past, it's been things like Soapbox Derby, River Day, Christmas Light Switch On, and Heritage Open Days. We also have the Queen's Platinum Jubilee coming up, so I'll hand over to David.
So we do usually concentrate on 4 sort of big town events, although as Chair has just alluded to, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee is a long weekend from Thursday the 2nd to Sunday the 5th of June next year. So not wanting to preempt any discussions, I have just sort of made a slide which actually includes the Jubilee as one of our 4 key events. We'll move on to what that entails in a sec. But if we actually include the Queen's Jubilee, we always, and I'd like to continue, especially with all the investment in the Guildhall, to continue to focus on a Heritage Festival in September, which also includes Heritage Open Days. But clearly, as you've just heard from Katie's presentation, there's a lot more activity that we'll be presenting in terms of our own themed events, and obviously Christmas. But again, not just concentrating in investing a lot of money in our Christmas Light Switch On, but taking it further. So I've looked at the Christmas Light Switch On next year will be Friday the 25th of November, but to take it on to another sort of 3-week period, doing lots of different activities throughout that time, up to and including the 18th of December. But where we are lacking an idea of an event is we've done the River Day for several years, we've done the Soapbox Challenge for a few years, last year curtailed any activity, so we've got a break. Is there something we specifically want to put into that slot? The River Day, I'm hoping with the new BFBR project and the investment in the Riverside, that will happen anyway, so it might not need as much of our funding focus on one of those 4 events. So is there something else that we could be developing? So over to discussion.
Yes, Councillor Khan.
Staff-wise, I think we need that as a big mistake if we do form and that, then we must be with it. At the moment, and we look at the staff-wise, we've got 4 days banking days, which is staff still work, and then we've got 30 weekends, and then we've got Christmas. So I think that the 2 events is really thinking of that year.
Yes, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Fred, in terms of we're doing a proper job of the fact that we really that we take quite a bit of our time to do that. The River Day created a momentum there, and what we're pressing the investment into with the right we do need to keep that going. And otherwise, we know that it's not going to happen, and we really need to do it like this. But we have to support them to make sure that that happens. Because we've got the green area down there, it's having more people and do need to help support, promote that whole, recruitment. So, yes, if we think it's good, the less we know that we're the most not.
At the risk of throwing a curveball in and hearing what Katie was saying about the craft side of things, there is always the opportunity to put back in prior to the Queen's Jubilee, on the May bank holiday. I know again it's bank holiday, the Flagging Up Thetford project. But in terms of staffing, is that too much?
Well, Flagging Up Thetford was, in terms of staffing, was quite low key, because what it was about was trying to dress the town in the flags and the bunting and get people involved in trying to do the same with their shop fronts, and getting other local groups involved in trying to adorn the town centre with flags and bunting and things. The only thing I would say is, there's work involved in trying to develop that from scratch. It's quite a big project. I don't know, really.
Councillor Brown.
I think at this meeting, probably will include that group that I would like to be very flexible and bring this community back together. We have got various adverts for staff. Not sure what staff we're going to get. We have a better idea of what we want to try and do for the town and the people around them. So I think these things that really do get there, and I like to think that the committee can move on a fast basis. One of the things I do wonder is that I have seen the Wrexham email coming out about some of the UK and France. One of the things is the Wrexham Act, which is energy, utility, and France. Which is also people after talking to them is the fact that there is a possibility to look at getting volunteers for the camp to try and work on a full route for the volunteers. We are very good, we never asked country farmers especially as a group. Most of the museums have groups of very good and I think it would be nice to try and just have a look at that from the office because expenses and council become the movement here of volunteer groups and give them support, and it will also help learning and developing habits self-guiding and everything else. And it feeds into this sort of thing absolutely entirely because I feel that a lot of the groups are a little bit siloed and we want to be able to bang on because we love that on and we do but a lot of those things could be done for other people in the business and they may have got a bigger huge amount of quality and we can put in all of our activities and this committee can be a good place to try and get that.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. Councillor Wright, please.
Yes, just want to have the Graham's comment there. Very supportive of any investment in the town and the conscious of what volunteers and that some do so. With one hand, we did toy with the idea of promoting ambassadors, so we had phones for taxi drivers, hotel staff, people had a little bit more knowledge about the heritage and so when visitors came, they could think part a little bit of what else is to offer, but also putting them in the right direction to the other facilities we've got. So, and obviously, we've got other voluntary groups that have can't for it to be facilitate it in this way. But where does it sit within our committee structure to take it forward?
So can I just answer the first one? The Heritage Ambassadors is certainly a scheme that we want to develop. We have talked about this in the past. The only thing I'm mindful of at the moment is trying to dump everything onto Katie. Her post is only 30 hours a week, although she's got a cracking work ethic, but that's not to be taken for granted. So we wanted to reopen the venue. We wanted to kickstart it with activity because that's going to draw people in, and word of mouth is an excellent thing. So I think the Heritage Ambassadors scheme is on the next stage. We have talked about helping other museums. In fact, I was in a meeting with the Sikh steering group that we've set up. And one of the issues that they have is the Ancient House Museum is not open on a Sunday currently, or hasn't been open on a Sunday. Someone from the North Museum Service was talking about potentially opening it up when we have Sikh visitors into the town. And we offered as a town council, as one of our heritage ambassadors, could also go in and support that to ensure that the Sikh visitors had a real day out with in every aspect of our Sikh heritage, and not just a statue of Guildhall on the graveside. So we are trying to help, and I know Tina's doing an awful lot of work with the Charles Burrell Museum, so we are trying to do that, but just to be mindful of promising too much. It will be the next stage project that we work on. The big thing for Katie, and this is where we have to be very careful, is she is funded by the NHLF, and it is the Guildhall Heritage Project, so her priority is the Guildhall and the marketplace. So my thinking actually is on area 2, is if councillors are supportive in looking at 3 big events, and we'll go on to the Queen's Jubilee in a minute, we wouldn't not do anything between June and September. What we would be doing is lots of smaller activities on a regular basis, certainly through the school holiday period, which is between those times, on the market square, because that's our land. There is lots of talk about other groups getting involved to deliver events in the town, Breckland, Hemingway and all the rest of it. We've yet to see how that materialises. So again, let's concentrate on our events, and if we can assist and support, be part of those, then that's great. But yeah.
So if I may, can we pull it back, because obviously the agenda item is town events. So Stuart, is there anything that you want to add specifically on that point?
Yeah, I just want to take on board, we don't want to just get too funding, and so especially when we take it forward rather than part of it, because it's then go to another committee or bureaucracy to look at that something big to get it. Whatever you do, it's going to be a time scale before it comes through. But I think we can work just looking at that.
So just, sorry, Chair, but just to clarify, because we are still a little bit confused by the new committees and what are their responsibilities. In terms of this particular project, it would sit squarely within this committee's group. I mean, it is what it says on the tin. We are heritage and town events. So anything like a heritage ambassador scheme sits squarely within this committee. So we would have to take ownership of that.
So in terms of this agenda item, the feeling that I'm getting from you, the committee, is that currently we sit with the 3 events as we have been forecast for 2022, with the opportunity to pivot if we need to on River Day, should that sort of start coming through and there's something that we can add value to there. But if we focus our core efforts on Platinum Jubilee, Heritage Festival and Christmas Festival at this stage, and then obviously that helps in terms of the process that will be starting in September, forward planning and budgeting. Sorry, bringing that up already again. Is that the desire of this committee on this agenda item? Is everybody happy with that? Anybody really not happy, and I've missed the boat completely?
Just a supplementary comment in terms of that planning for planning to lead with package that we know about because that we to do that
turn as if by magic.
So,
The next part of it is.
so the next slide, when I had a discussion with Jane about trying to look to how we plan this event, Jane was very mindful of trying to create a slide which shows what we potentially could do, and it's still up for discussion, that's what this meeting is about, and what nationally will be happening. So on the right hand side you will see that Thursday is all about the more sort of Queen celebration of the Queen's birthday in terms of Truth in the Colour, the platinum beacon lighting across the nation. So I think day one we have to try and replicate that to a degree. So again, there will be the piper. Will raise the flag, and the mayor of the day will make the toast. We could have a civic parade and a reception within the Guildhall, and certainly in the evening, I think it's 6 or 9:15. Sorry, we have the beacon lighting. So that's what we're probably going to be planning Thursday. Friday, there's been a suggestion that we have a big music event, so very similar to the one we had for the Queen's Golden or Diamond Jubilee on Melford Common. And I think Jane offered up the idea of music through the 7 decades, which is a really nice touch, I think. So we can get a lot of variety, something for everybody. And then nationally on the Sunday, they're pushing the big Jubilee lunch, and there will be a platinum Jubilee pageant in the leading up to the 6th Strand, leading up to Buckingham Palace. So where we've got something missing is on Saturday, because the Queen will be at the Derby. She loves her horse racing, and there will be the party at the Palace, just as they did with the iconic Brian May on top of the roof, playing guitar, stuff like that. So I don't think we should have our music event in competition with that, unless we're really going to go massive and have a big screen on the marketplace or something like that, so we get a bit of a double whammy. But I think Friday would be a good day for our music event. But what do we do on a Saturday, and is those other areas of that weekend proposal satisfactory with the committee?
Yes, Councillor Green.
No.
The right-hand side is the national events that Her Majesty and her team are planning.
We are in a position this time, the first one ever,
It will depend on their operational commitments.
but I think it's something that we could take very quickly, because a lot of people are going to be doing it. It is a year of such way. It is first, and I do know how Conington were, are, having a feeling to the man. And it seems like an ideal thing that we can do if we're going to raise the flag, do a toast, if we could get them to actually put
So if I may, are you suggesting perhaps that we combine that with the civic parade element aspect that we're exploring? Is that something that you can explore for us? Thank you. Next. What I was thinking, can we leave the Saturday blank so we can all breathe? And staff, and yeah, because I'm just thinking, being very mindful that the Friday is actually quite a big commitment at 12 till noon in terms of staffing, support, and everybody else. And actually, most people probably wouldn't lie in after the Friday night. Stuart.
Well, just going back to Roy's comment about we need to sort of start booking things. We have already purchased hundreds and hundreds of meters of bunting, so it will crisscross the whole town centre.
else, please, anybody? I'll take Brenda Cannon first, please.
Yes, on the outside, we've got a 26 land. Do you know the street party?
It's a street party, but
The
yeah.
reason I'm asking you that is because if we put out a 26 land, you know, by the ticket, they think we don't get land. But it's not going to fly their own land.
No, I think I just put the Queen Street Lunch just to tie in with the national theme.
I thought that's what it was. I was like, really that up, you know, how people can find it, that kind of thing. You can't get it for the land, but it's not.
I'm really mindful that with at the previous Jubilee, the two events that everybody spoke about, and still do, actually they spoke about it when the Mayor and I had our conversation with Les Unir, was the street party that they attended for the last Jubilee. So it's very much fixed inside it. And the other side of things is crikey, regardless of your beliefs about what has happened, the last 18 months have been really, really hard on our community, and it's been wonderful to give something back and give people a cause to celebrate and come together. Councillor Gray, you want to say something?
Going on the category, understand where the money from, this event, and the most of the time. I'm just wondering if the fact that having that would be something there that you could look at. I wonder if we could start now talking to staff who may well want to do Jubilee gifts and that type of thing. Not only to sell on that particular day, but if we start looking at staff who might want to start up, there may be a pot in the pan or something like that. But if we were saying that we were going to look for a Jubilee party Saturday, then it was not especially for us. Zero no, we have to do their own market, but in general, it is something that we can actually sell the space to starters, get a good income, the market on that day was not that empty. I'm quite sure that whether or not the Legion, if I would have thought they might be interested in having some sort of then and big packages and games something else they might be able to do for the people that are doing staffing things, rather than us using our tea rooms, because okay, yes, that is a way of earning money, but it's also an opportunity here to do something with our hands, with the food and with the Legion, which gives them space. It shows that we're keen on getting the whole community involved. It's not a great cost to the town. And just use the school idea as a small amount of income which is covered by the people aren't going to want to do that.
Did you want to come back on that point first of all? Okay. Councillor Cannon and then Councillor Bindon, please.
Well, I have that idea. This is the idea down here. I can imagine that if you've got all the people in that on that down, that down to and it's what is it? No part from town council, but you're uplifting Aboriginal investment.
Councillor Bindon, please.
I've been very impressed by what the service has done, really good. If you pick up one particular part of the smiling on the road, and I really think it's very helpful there, if you've got to pick up the right hand side as well as the left hand side. It seems to me that you can see where the weaknesses are on the right hand side, but it's very the national side that most people are not. I just wonder whether the big event there is likely to be with people saying, on Sunday, we can sit back and relax and see the TV pattern. I think it might be that the TV pattern already started
in a perfect world, Sunday would be out to separate market and then back to the platform TV, back on TV or whatever. So I'm thinking, explaining it to them is very difficult. I don't know what time I can say, you may know very, but if it's too, don't overlap too much, that would be a big focus for us.
Okay, so the idea of our big lunch, our street party and entertainment, would be 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. It is there on that bottom of the left-hand side. So really, people would have an opportunity to go home and watch the Jubilee pageant on TVs and things. No, I think the Jubilee lunch is a longer strand, and then in the evening, I think they're having other sort of street entertainers and all those. So I think people will want to go back and watch that, as they would want to watch the party at the Palace in the evening of the Saturday. But it also, the reason I was prompted to put that on a Sunday, because it's that horrible bit of the whole weekend where you've got to go around sort of late afternoon and clear everything up. So it gives us an opportunity where we can just go back and keel over probably about 7 o'clock at night. So I think it works quite well. The big thing and the purpose of this agenda item, Chair, is, as you said to me when we were planning this event, and you've already alluded to the fact that when we come back in September, budget setting is going to be top of the agenda. The last time we did this, as most of you probably know, because most of you are councillors then, it did cost the town quite a lot of money to put that kind of event on Melford Common. I've got a recollection of it's about £20,000. I'm not sure whether that's the right figure, but I think it's something in that region. I think we're better equipped now to do things differently, so we might not have to spend that amount of money. We do know a lot more people that's through the decades, certainly we know people that could do the entertainment. So again, we probably don't have to, we can have our headliner. So I'm not sure it's going to cost that much, but we certainly need to be mindful of how much it's going to cost and how we're going to raise that money. The others, I think, are well within our remit. I mean, the street party on a Sunday, we've done those before, and with the help and support of local schools and things with extra tables and stuff like that, I think we more than can deliver that. And the civic stuff on the Thursday is all part of our civic free, so that's not a problem. It's the Friday night event that we really do have to think about.
Councillor Watkins.
Yes, so following on from that, you're right, when we did the event 10 years ago, it cost us a lot of money, and you're right, in the ballpark, £10,000. And what the council at the time did was they justified raising the fee set. That would be better, but the subject of paying the household to get a free event on that at the time is well worth it. We had the support of the public because it's something that everybody could be part of. Also, family, once you're paying, you can do your take family once you're paying to see a holiday or like that. It was good as well. So I think mindful you had all the managers and clients and stuff like that to come. But I think back in our mind, just look at the festival best. I think bear that in mind and go forward, because you don't want to do something after. You want to do something really good and I'm not friends something else where it's definitely really good job. So the second point is you mentioned that you're just wondering, we know swimming associations for fun, but we do have civic links. Is that something that we've got the future organising, or is it something we want to just invite those to, because we've already got something set up to it? So very conscious when we do civics, you've got to put something you've got something already there for a plan, that might be a
Sadly, I've already told them to save the dates. We did that on our recent video call with them, because it's just too exciting. They spoke so fondly in terms of memory of the event, and I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. So it will be a great opportunity to bring our civic partners from Europe together as well. any further questions on this, please? David, do you feel that you have enough to pull together some cunning plans and prices? We do meet again on the 5th of August.
Okay, well, it's encouraging that the committee is all for adopting that proposal. So what I'll try and do, I'm already getting emails from suppliers, you know, toilets and things like that. They're going to be, you know, if we don't put our bid in or our application in, we're not going to get it. It's as simple as that. So it's good that we're talking about it now. So in between time, I can actually provide an expression of interest to lots of these suppliers to say that we are going to have our event and it's on this day and we need this, this and this, and also what's the cost. So I can bring costs back in August, and that's what I'll do.
Is there anything else before we move on from this agenda item, please? Super. In that case, we move on to 14421, Queen's Jubilee Tree, to discuss ideas, and it's to agree a proposal to recommend to full council. You may recall that I got very excited about the opportunity to perhaps plant a substantial specimen in relation to the Jubilee, and I think my personal view is that it's an amazing opportunity for us to celebrate this moment. I asked the town clerk to do some exploration in terms of costings, prices, that kind of thing, and also maintenance, because obviously you can't just stick a tree in, it requires a little bit of love, but it turns out the bigger the tree, the less long-term love it needs. And we've been looking, and the town clerk is confident that in terms of installing and the associated works around it, we could potentially do all in for about £1,000. Now, what that would look at is a mature English oak tree, Quercus rosa. Potentially, we could go up to a girth on that of around 18 to 20 centimetres, which translates into height quite frighteningly, about 5.5 to 6 metres tall. So it would be a phenomenally significant tree, and that also takes into account, because it will come root ball, the hire of machinery to dig a suitable sized hole, and the clerk's already thinking there is the opportunity, if we are hiring in that sort of equipment, are there other works that we could utilise it for on allotments and that kind of thing. Obviously there is no budget for this. The civic reserves currently sit at 15,500, and were this committee minded, it would be my suggestion that we request permission from full council to utilise some civic reserves for this. Obviously we would need to put, much like the depot tree, something around the bottom, a plaque to commemorate the reasoning for it. And I'm delighted to say that the guidance is, Mike, that planting should happen between November and March. So it's not all the deputy mayor thinking about her mayoral year. There is also stuff for the current mayor. And I think it's quite an exciting opportunity. Mr. Mayor. I think that's sort of a quite a good point to pause and invite any questions.
You already have two trees, in the area that lies between the Lake Central Meadow and on our side, which together cover, the Jameson's personnel. And I think that's got some advantage. I think those two areas themselves are probably now, I don't think it's going to be but because it doesn't really perhaps you can find a use for after the end of the middle, it's a very good location for because there's plenty of space there. And finally, the other things that the council and Mark Wilson have been talking about, such as mowing the rest of the Northern Wildlife area, creating a large where they live, children there, kind of children's activities that become a number of children's areas and all part of the area of developing our riverhead, which I think is so much of what we do. It's not just building river. So the suggestion has to agree with Simon and suggest a regulation.
Super. In response to your question regarding locations, that's exactly what I asked the clerk to explore with our countryside specialist, because actually he knows things far better. The guidance is there's luckily oaks can tolerate most soils except shallow soil, so we need to be mindful of that in terms of the planting. So asked for that to be looked at so that we can explore the most appropriate site. Yeah, it's really quite exciting because they can reach heights of up to 87 feet and they have a long lifespan of 50 to 100 years, 500 to 1,000 years. So we've got something that is going to be there for quite some time. It's good enough for the Royal Navy to make boats out of. Good enough for us. Seems perfect, doesn't it? Councillor Wright and then Councillor Brain, please.
Yeah, I think Mayor and I will explain those gentlemen over a few weeks back, and one of the things to do, we have a specimen tree, we will do on a piece of size so that people don't know that we're exactly we're picking up, we want something that's nice to the market, and we also wanted an area that it is on its own and makes its own space, so that it will be lost in the opportunities. So the idea is a little later in the is to great school plane is another area where you've got a big green area that potentially could go into the red and different parts that we need to improve. So wherever we put it, I think we need to be on the plan. So yes, that is our usual green.
Okay, thank you. That's the Brain, please.
Just thank you, Chair. In the area, anywhere else, but other than that, I like the idea of that area. Lake Central Meadow doesn't tend to get enough football and things like that. It's always huge. So it's something that very few, especially people actually know it is. So it could be good to promote that. But I must admit, I'm wondering if the other side of the road, where we can have it in action, would be good. In that large area there, it really would that low, and it gets a lot of cars in those areas, and if we try and make the river thing happen, it would be really quite nice to be able to do all that regard, which doesn't get quite the meadow, and
There's an interesting concept to that, isn't there? Because the other side, on the BTO side, there's actually the avenue of trees, isn't there? So again, in terms of context, that does fit quite well. Yeah, I'm not sure that digging up your tree is going to be the most cost-effective way forward for our resident taxpayers. But thank you very much for the offer. Is there anything else on that matter before we pull together a recommendation to full council?
Is there any funding? We've got some councils or millions of trees to the world. Is there any funding for when you actually start affecting trees?
We are exploring that, is my understanding, but I'd rather go belt and braces. If we can get funding, brilliant. If not, it's kind of worst case scenario. David, is
I
there
think
something?
there is some funding from the Wildlife Trust, or the Woodland Trust, sorry, Woodland Trust. The problem with that is I don't think it extends to this kind of mature tree. They're looking at lots of different trees that plant.
Councillor Brown, please.
Just had a question on the fee. If this committee decides to spend its budget on the fee, what would you need to go to the council? Why is it not an army? It's really it's the resolved matter that we have resolved that we would be in that.
It's a valid question and challenge, Councillor Brown, because it is coming out of reserves, and those reserves have not been budgeted for this year, so it is unbudgeted expenditure. So we need full council approval. So, other hat on there. If it were within our budgeted expenditure plans, then yes. But because it's not been budgeted for in this year, and it's coming out of reserves that we haven't said that we'll be taking it out of reserves this year when we set the budget back in December, it does need full council ratification. If you recall the reserving policy that we approved in October last year, that also reinforces this process. Committees are able to set up budgets with specific reasons, and because the budgets that are, the reserves that are sitting there have not been set up with Queen's Platinum Jubilee named on them with that specific focus, we need to be clear and above board to the public how we are spending effectively our savings. So my recommendation on this item is that the Heritage and Town Events request that the full council permit the use of up to £1,000 from the civic reserves in order to purchase and install a significant mature specimen of an oak in honour of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Do I have a second on that? Thank you, Councillor Hollis. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Super. Thank you very much. Did you get the wording of that okay, Chris? It's been recorded. We're good. Lovely. Thank you all very, very much. So we move on to 14521 and bringing it back into this year. Civic Events 2021. So if we could have an update, please.
So I had a chat with the civic officer prior to the meeting, and the only event that she's planning in terms of our civic events at this moment in time is about the bread reception, which is in September. And so therefore hopefully the restrictions are lifted and they will be going ahead. She has spoken to the organiser, and John has confirmed that his wishes are to go ahead with an event, a church service. So hopefully it will be unrestricted, and we can have our usual celebrations for the Battle of Britain and the reception in the Guildhall post church service. So that's the only one that is being planned at the moment. The others will be picked up in our August.
Any questions on that, please? Super, thank you so much for the update. So we move on to 14621 civic policy, which is to discuss the proposal to the roles of the changes to the roles to civic mayor's officers. David.
So at the last meeting, we did discuss some changes to the civic policy, and they were approved, and that was to look at various different job titles and just to tidy up the policy in terms of explaining that. Since that meeting, we, as most of the council would know, the current mayor's officer is due for retirement, and he will be leaving us in August. The current staff member that is the mace bearer will then take on a different role within the council, so time commitments are going to be difficult in terms of enabling him to facilitate that role within our civic events. The civic events are only a few a year, so the proposal is to look at those areas in terms of sessional positions. So we just call people in as and when we need them. So we would have to advertise for people. We would have to interview those people in the normal way, but they would take on those sessional posts as the sword bearer, the mace bearer, and as we currently have with the town crier. In terms of the civic officer and the mayor's officer, just as we did with our last meeting, we amalgamated those roles of the civic secretary and the mayor's officer. We would also absorb the functions of the mayor's officer into that role. So let me explain it just a little bit more clearly. So basically, that's the committee. The committee is facilitated by myself and the civic officer, and the civic officer would be in charge of the sessional posts of town crier, sword bearer, and mace bearer. You also see Katie's role there on the right hand side, the heritage and events officer, and again we were talking about volunteers, so eventually she would be in charge of the heritage ambassadors. The civic officer is also in charge of the mayoral office, so therefore she keeps the mayoral diary, facilitates all the attendance at the events, etc., and also helps plan those civic events that happen within our venues. So it's just a case of tidying it up. So the current policy, the issue that we have at the moment in section E of our civic policy, the roles of the civic officer, it does state that he or she should attend the mayor functions and events which the mayor is invited to in Deptford's parochial boundary. If the civic officer is unavailable, this duty may be carried out by a councillor or officer of Deptford Town Council. So basically, we're doing away with what we now call the mayor's officer, and it will be conducted by the civic officer, as all the other duties in terms of our civic responsibility. The key one is where the mayor is invited to functions and events outside Deptford's parochial boundary. And traditionally, they have been supported by the mayor's officer to attend those events. And again, what our proposal is they wouldn't be. So basically, they would be facilitated by the civic officer at all events. So an invite would come in from one of the surrounding towns or cities. It would be presented to the mayor. They would say yay or nay. And if they did want to attend that event, they would everything would be dictated to in terms of attendance, times, and duties, and what they need to wear, etc. But they wouldn't be supported by a physical person attending that event. So in terms of the amendments to our civic policy, it's those two areas that we would have to omit from our current policy. So it's just what the councillors feel about that area.
Councillor Winston.
First, I think it's realistic that, regretful but realistic that the first form of office is reduced or not really available. It can be part of the system because it's very well, and that's what people are available. I'm talking, I wouldn't personally talk as well, I've spoken to the biggest living past there about their experiences there, and clearly it's got to work with this student very valuable. So I don't want to underrate the reflection and people do it. I understand this from you could probably have been overly supported by local education in that room. In fact, we simply do, we go back and really look at those problems that are Sunday and the creating the main goal, and so I think that is really a manual in the film. Well, the second example is what things that we take together. I think the time of going here at the end of the day, advertising the way of the best. That has been put there. Those who are a fair distance or a leading activity, there are losses in not able to manage that. Our way of being is share out in the town. And the space formed by the mayor every day in person, and I don't want to that mayors are like to the background space actually very important because not every mayor might be able to do that. So I feel I'm concerned about the way in which this will impact on particularly on some people in what is very important. And I'll have to suggest that it might be worth looking at the experience of business how what other ways there are to get to that important, or whether in fact we need to consider whether every of them is going to do it.
Councillor White, please.
I think this is probably the most contentious point, hopefully, the organisation we put there, and taking on the mayor's comments, I think that those of us who have appreciate the efforts of the mayor's office to minimise the amount of stress that you go through. Some people come to the office not expecting, not knowing what to expect, and we drive you through, take you through everything, and also minimises the amount of time. Drive somebody or something at the park, to take extra time to do that. But rolling back to the inconvenience of the mayor, it's also something in past years what we've tried to do is make the facility of mayor open door, so that anybody who can't drive, that has a car, or won't drive at night, because it's something that the people don't want to do, especially after years, or like morning. And also, you have to be private. I know you're not there for joy, but you do want to have a glass of wine to social. So I don't think we ought to close the door for our future mayors to be able to attend over there and do the job right. Because one last thing we want to do is accept you turn up and drive home, because it's easier to do that rather than spending a bit of time pressing the flesh
agree entirely with what Stuart said. And it's not only when you are out of the area, it's also when you're in the land. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. We had their making here this year, and the mayor and their ex were not dressed appropriately when they came to pay. Yes, they had it on, yes, they had all the gala, but it wasn't on correctly, because nobody is dressed. And the mayor's officer for every previous mayor would not have let the mayor dress the capital like that, or the deputy mayor. It was something that was missed by the officer. It is something that this town is renowned for. You go to lots of places where you will go in Woolwich area, you will go west with the road and everything. When you wear the chain to represent the message, everybody in that room will look at you or anybody else. That chain in this area and in this civic circle is the pinnacle of marijuana. And it should not be just what it's like that. It isn't what it's about. You are there to represent most of this town, and the council should either support it correctly or give it up. You can say no to going, but this town has 800 plus years. Now, I agree that through circumstances, it is becoming non-profit. But we are now in a position where if you take the town bar and store there and the main there, there is no reason at all why the store there who should be trained correctly has always been the great part of the area. And the main bearer should have proper training. They should be members of the guild, as with the town fire, and we should support and facilitate them being members. In any case of just getting any old Tom, Dick or Harry to come and hold the sword, there is proper protocol for what's happening. Yes, it can be an ad hoc post where you only do it when required, but to that, one of those should be the mayor's office, who should also be trained to do vetting and making sure that the mayor effectively looks correct at the time. It should also be a position where you shouldn't expect, hope you don't expect the mayor to drive to Roma and not get paid effectively. And I'm in a position where I'm chairman of the district council, and I don't get a chairman's officer. Everything else I get, but I have to make my way there. I do get paid for my mileage on the normal council district rate, and I feel that the mayor should. And I'm quite certain that as a 0-hour contract, we can find somebody and possibly even approach the man who has all the skills to take that on a cost basis, to do mileage and some sort of remuneration on 0-hour contract money to stay with the mayor at the occasion. Whether the current one who is retiring would like to carry on, or is paying up one or the other, we should actually have a doesn't cost a fortune, but is put into making sure that whoever is fortunate enough to become the mayor doesn't have to go through getting themselves ready, themselves ready, driving, finding somewhere to park. You know, when you end up at a cathedral in Norwich and you're expected to be there by the right time, you've never been before, that especially in Norwich, will park with about a mile and a half from the cathedral. You'll never know how to get in there. We have somebody who does, and I don't see why, if this council is prepared to use city reserves at the cost of £1,000 to put a tree in the middle of a field that no one will go and look at. It's a lovely thing, it's the Queen, and I'm very supportive of it, but I know honestly that within 3 years' time, nobody will know it's there, nobody will ever go and look at it, other than the people in the council side. But that person who is given that honour to be the mayor of this town deserves support and shouldn't be expected to pay for a nice hotel. And in this case, it's absolutely ridiculous because the mayor had to book his hotel. It all then gets changed. The civic function that he's going to is now not until September. You know, okay, he's in a position to actually say, well, I'm going to have a weekend with the one great and do it. There are many people there who weren't in that. And when you look round the table of people who are coming up, let's not make it something that the only person that can be the mayor is a retired person who's going to, of course, take his own job and who is a business person that is looking at it as a great honour and is prepared to come better. I would say we either have a mayor's officer that does the job, sort out the budget, sort out the price, do the job properly, or we do the same as various measures, or whatever it's now called, and say, we're not leaving men. We're not coming to see anybody else, we're not going to look our town outside of our town. What's going to do? Because I cannot see any reason why this town should not be able to support mayoral roles. And I will say, I have got an interest, whether it's opportunity or not, I've been in the job, and there is no way that I would ever do it again if I was expected to go somewhere in a sitting taxi. The year I was there, Roger's wife was not well, and there was an occasion where, that's easier than you by taxi. Yeah? The taxi driver said, yeah, I'll come. That's £40 to get to Norwich. That's £40 to come back to Norwich. And I want £110 to sit and wait for 4 hours while I'm there. Because it's not worth me going to Norwich with a taxi unless I'm going to get 170 quid. Now, if we look at this properly on a basis of its job, not part of any council working job as it was, which caused lots of problems because of overtime and all sorts of things. Let's look at this. Does Bexley deserve to support an 800-year-old morality with money? Or let's just put a lot of things out. I'm sorry, that job is worth more to this town and to the mayor of the day than it is.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Before I come on to Councillor Cannon, David.
If Brenda, I mean, we've got one current mayor and 3 past mayors sitting around these tables, so I'd rather hear Brenda's view as well.
Thank you.
with a good planning area, he tells you what to do. They've got to go in there, I'll be in there, it's just in there. So you know, this is actually, you learn all this over the years. So it's actually saying to you, this is what you're going to do. And then, as I say, when you go to knowledge, you've got to off and say, I will come back in such a time and I'll be able to make a target. That is the biggest issue. I have no problem when you have to go through the knowledge for the, if it's Britain, needs any sort of play. So that isn't a problem. And I've done our taxis to some events, got no problem with that because I produce the mayor's budget. But what I would like to see from that in any decision is what the difference is to say it's no more than that policy don't policy to say you don't drive. I've got to remember not every mayor will drive. So you don't drive. If it works, the mayor's officer stepping out, taking you to and coming back, or you see has to go by a taxi, and I think that's the way it is. I think we'll agree with because Roger took it to go down to the very low for something, and then we've got the taxi back. So I think it's looking at basically what it costs the mayor over the year, and does the expenses cover the normal way what we normally do, you know, sometimes we have an exception with something good there or something. But I would not like to make that decision today because I haven't got the decision. The song there is normally in there, anyway, so I don't know what we do about that. Whether you keep that as one mile, and the main thing is that you just put that out there. I'm not sure that's I think there is obvious there actually going out. I do believe that people look at the how, you know, this is as I do. When we focus doing it, because the new years that are coming up are I'm constantly getting you don't really get up. Go market, if you just sit there, you know, the name is going through and executives there. Because they're new. You know, and when you pay here in the half year session, you said, I'm taking that back to the council, so they're saying that it's so some years are new. We're not, we're 800 years and you have to, if you start diluting it too much, I know that it's all of this because it's not just history of the mayor. I think we start to lose it there. But, okay, the key thing is when you lose the mayor's officer, and I think in the rules it was you only lose the mayor's officer when you are in hospital. It's just got to be the town of the vote out. You know, in the town, I'd actually to do nothing. Because it might be a separate, you know, you lose your officer, and here, it's prepared. But it's just about having to be through.
Thank you, Councillor. David.
I've got right, let me just try and think about the right words to say, because there are a lot of contradictions that have been mentioned. The first thing I would say is I agree with Roy. Training is absolutely essential. The current mayor's officer, until he retires in August, has been the mayor's officer and salt bearer for many years. COVID has unearthed lots of different shortcomings over the last year plus. And the fact that he wasn't allowed at some of the events, he hasn't, unfortunately, had some personal issues that he couldn't attend other events. That it's flagged up in terms of the business risk to the council. He was the only one with the knowledge, which is absolutely ludicrous, really. And I take a lot of the blame for that on myself, because as I've inherited this committee as part of my job role, that should have been one of the first things that I looked at. But we were caught out. But with respect, the mayor's officer has never shared that knowledge with anybody else. And there will come a point where, and it's coming to a point where he's retiring. So we would have had to address that. at some point anyway. The second thing is, and it's not about diluting our mayoral history, but I've been here for 8 years, and I know when you've had mayor civic halls in the past, that the office that currently most of the admin staff sit in used to be an upper gallery. And the mayors used to arrive with their mayor's officers, their chauffeurs, whatever you want to call them. And there used to be half a dozen, if not more, in that gallery. The last event that we actually hosted, or we were able to host, there was one. And that person came from Bury St Edmunds, who, as Roy just said, has done away with their officer. So, in actual fact, I don't think anybody would be attending with any of the mayoral mayors, attending our events in the future. But that's not an excuse to do away with ours. That's a decision you guys have to make. That slide there shows the sword bearer. The sword bearer, in terms of the civic party and the procession, the responsibility, the sword bearer is the most important person in terms of our civic party, outside the mayor and the mayoress, or the mayor and the consul. So that's why we've also traditionally dubbed him the mayor's officer as well. You don't necessarily have to have the title of mayor's officer, you don't have to have the title of civic officer. But you could have another one up there that is employed sessionally to take people out to events. The budget, it's not about a budget thing, because again, I've been here for enough years to realise that when we sit at the end of the year, the allowance that we have set aside for the mayor's allowance is more often than not underspent. In fact, the last 2 financial years, we've not upped that expenditure simply because we've no need to. So it's not about not having the money to pay, whether it's for taxis or whether it's for a sessional chauffeur to take you to your event. I didn't realise that you've got a hotel for an event, Mike, and if that's an additional expense, that's a legitimate expense that you could claim back from the mayoral allowance. So it's not about finances, it's about the way we deploy staff. And traditionally, we haven't deployed staff in the right way. I asked Roger once, what do you do when you take the mayor out? You're there for several hours, what do you do? He said, well, I take the mayor to Ipswich and basically I sit in a car park. Now, I worked in Ipswich for 13 years and that's the last thing I'd like to do, sit in a car park for 7 or 8 hours. So again, are we deploying people in the wrong way? I understand Roger's got a mind of experience and knowledge. We need to uncover that before he leaves, but then he's got to be willing to share it, because he certainly hasn't over the last few years. But as I said, COVID has unearthed a lot of issues that we can and need to address going forward. So whether we need to look at that and say that we continue with a sessional person to take the mayor and mayor out, my stand on it is, and Kings Lynn is a great example. They have a first-class civic office. They're all part-time, as you say, but the one thing they do is they find out the expectations of their mayor at their event. They know where it is, they know what time it is that they attend, they know how they should dress. Is there a requirement to make a speech? Where will you be in the parade, etc.? And our civic office needs to aspire to that if we haven't already addressed that over the last year. So I think there's areas where we need to improve, but this is a specific request. Do we still need, and I would veer away from mayoral officer or mayor's officer, and basically we're talking about a chauffeur. So do you need a mayoral chauffeur for external events? There's a cost to that. It can be taken out of the mayor's allowance on a sessional basis, not an issue. So I don't think it's diluting the mayoral office.
If I may, recommend to Councillor Brennan, in terms of the civic office, when Sylvia Arms and myself rewrote the civic policy and the mayoral handbook, we adopted Kings Lynn's format for sending out to people, asking exactly what it is. And actually, just filled one in for our mayor for an event. You know, it is very, very clear and very, very specific about, as you rightly said, David, you know, what are the expectations, who are they even going to meet? There was even a requirement on that side of things, so you have that opportunity to have the heads up. So we've adopted some of those best practices already. So I think, yes, what's coming through here today is the value of the knowledge that sits within the existing person, and for want of a better phrase, it's indicative of a lot of work that we've been doing for quite some time, that we need to have bus manuals. If someone falls under a bus tomorrow, everything can still continue, and the knowledge doesn't sit in one place and one place only, because that is not a business continuity plan. And at risk of sounding really corporate, that's what we need. Councillor Cannon. Sorry.
Yeah, because I was instantly listening to what you were saying. You don't have to call me the mayor's officer. I just think it's handy because although I don't drink, like drinking, when you go to these events and they give you a glass of wine to get to feed you, you do, you know, you do feel a bit dizzy. So I wouldn't like to have to drive myself home after you 64 because you feel really much to drink it. I would agree with that. But when you were saying that, then before the mayor becomes the mayor, and the but the mayor is now how to dress himself. Because you know, somebody that I think Mark Robinson, when he became the mayor that time, I was thinking, well, you know, can you say I said this thing and you said and you know, the time is right down there. You know, so I think if you're going to go down that route, it's not there to dress you, that you know how to dress yourself before you become here.
I absolutely agree with that. And the problem is, even if we didn't have COVID and that one person in the organisation was ill, we would have had that problem staring us in the face because the knowledge wasn't shared with anybody else.
And also, the mayor must work with staff to know when your blood sugar is on your kidneys, because I know Jenny was really good. She performed a bit away and we start them all, and you know, because they were literally, sometimes they were embarrassed. And especially when you take it off on them, put it on another, obviously, it's looking at all the background bits that Roger we do. That he's going to maintain their growth, you know, as he's doing, he's really down there, he's training, but it is that sort of thing.
And I must admit, year after year, I've heard mayors, no matter how long they've served as a councillor, have said that, you know, it has been a culture shock in terms of what the expectations are. They didn't realise what was expected in the mayoral office. So I think training, and also the mayor's induction. We did change the policy so the deputy mayor would serve that year, if you like, to try and get an understanding of what the expectations were, instead of the role reversal. So I take all the points on board, but we still have the situation of, you know, what do we do in terms of the requirement? Kings Lynn's a really good example. To take it to a different point, Kings Lynn scale their events, actually. They scale the requirements. So if an invitation comes in, they look at it and go, how does it benefit Kings Lynn or West Norfolk? You know, the highest event scale is that they get, because it's a Royal Charter town, they get an invite annually to the Queen's Garden Party, Buckingham Palace. So that's an absolute must. There are 2 or 3 other events which are an absolute must. Local events take preference to away days because they have to look at it and go, well, what does that benefit Thetford, or what does it benefit Kings Lynn? If you go trotting off to Ipswich, what is the return that we're going to get? So I think there's a whole host of things that we should be looking at, but the issue here is what do we do in terms of the chauffeured support, if you like, for those events.
Councillor Wright, please.
One year to road shelter, so good, but, the mayor's office is still there, is what I view it, and yes, they may have idle time when they're taking you somewhere, at the same time, it does facilitate you as a mayor. When you're doing 200 events a year, which I do my mayor every year, they don't come with the state, sometimes you're chasing the tail, and you get it around, you're able to do it. So, following on to your point about what effect is going to benefit from the state, you don't know until you get there, because the person held, I've met people who are trustees of their trust, and I've with those associations, and I've put bids in subsequently, and brought about £10,000 into it, and as a result of pressing the flesh with those trustees who you need to be doing. And to cut it off before you know who's going to be there, I think that it's good something. We do need to get out of it as much as possible. We've had the tools, we've got a lovely badge, which draws the attention, we've got sword and mace that everybody really wants to see. So I don't think we can hide those away. You know, we've got sword and mace, let's get them out there. They are important things. Obviously, we don't try and do them all the while, but we do need to make sure that they are visible, not only to this town, but actually to wider each town. You're not just north of coast. Separate lines on the boundary between the two. If you're near Promo, you just have more to do and more to see places. If you're near Bedford, you've got a wider hinterland, you need to actually come to it. And it leads on to your events, as we said earlier. You're trying to get those people from there to come into Bedford to secure with your events. And that's part of the mayor's role, to be that ambassador, to get out of it. Show attention, what is Bedford about? And you can tell them. At the moment, because as somebody who's not going to believe the boundaries of Bedford, you're going to be so used to it, we're not going to draw people in. I feel very strongly, not just because having served, I think we're in strange times. Yes, we've had COVID for the last 2 years, because really we don't know what the new normal is going forward. I think we need to keep an eye on that and gear up accordingly. And if Berry are not willing to go outside, then that's their problem. We accept it, should be pushing ourselves to press the flesh in all those things, because there are people moving to this town, we don't know anything about it, there'll be businesses who want to come to this town. If we've got somebody looking to relocate from hotspots such as Cambridge, we can offer them business services cheaper, they will look to relocate. We've got opportunities here that we need to draw in investment into the town, and the mayor is one way of facilitating that. We've got the history, and history is great about doing, but it's also about now and what we're doing for the future. If we're going to say we're not going to go a dozen events a year, I think we're very good chance, because we have such a wonderful asset here. We need to shout that.
I do have Councillor Graham and Councillor Brindle anticipating to speak. I will come to you momentarily. I'm very mindful that you've already spoken on this item. Councillor Tullett, good morning. Is there anything you would like to add? Because I've noticed that you're taking it all in, and I'm really mindful that you should have the opportunity to engage in the debate.
I'm a very competent driver. I mean, it's so frustrating, 3 hours there and back, but my fear is if you're trying to concentrate on the event I'm going to, you've got to be worried about parking and getting there on time. And I think the mayor should be supporting and getting and some engagement. Whether it can be triggered by some zero down contract and what benefits that service, but I think the mayor is thinking that on this.
Thank you. And Councillor Hollis, I'm also mindful that we haven't heard from you on this debate. And I know you've had considerable experience, because obviously you were incredibly supportive to Councillor Fanny during her mayoral year.
I'm taking it all in and all the comments and I'm not to agree with what you say, what everybody said. I don't know. I'm listening and taking in, and I'm agreeing with practically everything.
I'll come to you, Councillor Green, but if I may, can I ask you to be brief, because you have spoken at length a couple of times on this subject.
Okay. I just want to report what Stuart said. when you offer the service there, and this upcoming time is going to be really, really good. The tech corridor, and then we're going to get invited to several places where we will meet people who want to come to this town. I was lucky enough to do that speak, and I had people up here to look at what they can do, not only in that group, but in Norwich as well. And it's something that you do, it brings a lot to the town. You don't know until you meet those people. And I can think of numerous occasions where I've had to look back to watching the car, learning a speech or doing notes and things, so that when I got there, I was prepared. You can't do that when you're doing 7 miles an hour on railway. Just not possible. Yes, we were in a position where it was an in-house position. We don't need it, but we do need to make sure that those positions are still funded. Got to be done properly, as you know. They know where it's supposed to do it today. They make sure you're in the right place. I was lucky enough to go to the garden party north of the town. It was the year I was there, so I asked Walter to say mine was that I could down and that happened over there. I didn't get across the courtyard and go into the front of the palace and 4 different people came up and said, oh, so they're better. They knew that down. And it is the biggest feeling that anybody has ever get. They need to be. Because once you find in their life that they're going to be expect to perform the best and prove the honor.
Councillor Brinker, please.
Yes, I'm not particularly afraid you guys are the set over. I'm very much open to you. I'm actually I'm looking to change the middle manager. I think I couldn't buy right there. And I want to say that to the people who can do there's a piece of student that you say there's building when you really don't have to look at our town. They have such a lot that you can send to visitors who want to come to say, yes, there are alternative ways where the woman cannot go to the town to claim for the water, and the parties remain strong out. Come to us, different programs. But I think there are ways, I think a bit reluctant to try in a small way because I think, I feel I'm pushing them intensively. I'm very good with what Roy and I think there's a real value in going off the stage and going to sit down and spending listen to sound, look at them here and look at everything we have.
Councillor Hollis, please.
I was just wondering, I'm sitting listening and we're getting all the things today. We know that the train is out, I know that, everybody knows, we know that. But we talk about I'm getting a bit. You've got Thomas tonight.
I'd be really pleased to know that I'm going to bring it back in.
No, I haven't agree. The nurse officer, whatever it was, it was helpful to me. I mean, many of times in my training, because I couldn't do it, many times like roasting and stuff, and roasting, and stuff like that. I mean, all things like that. So, yeah, I think if you have questions done of the 0 hours, get our
mayor's officer we've got now for 45 because all the meetings get through because they're and see how it works either way. Got one,
So the agenda decision required is to discuss and resolve any agreed amendments. I think we've given it ample discussion on the fact that mayors, past and present, thoroughly support and value the support that they have received in terms of roving and the local knowledge and the traditional knowledge that the mayor's officer has held in the past. It has been stated that we could happily do different, but there would appear to be a reluctance from this committee to remove that aspect of knowledge, and we have identified a training need, and I think both officers and councillors have identified that training need in order to support the mayors going forward. My suggestion would be, because in terms of the plan that we see before us, the sticking point has been that support element on external events, I think is probably the best way to phrase it. So would this committee be satisfied if we said, yes, in terms of the sessional elements that we have there, but can we now add the sessional elements in terms of a mayor's officer, mayor's aide, whatever you wish to call it, in terms of that 0 hours contract? Is that what this committee is saying? Is that something that you can work within?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was, pleased with Councillor Hollis's final comments because I was trying to rewind what I said in my mind because but anyway, we won't go back down that path. Mayor's aide. If you don't like the word chauffeur, because that's the connotations on chauffeur is, we're lauding it a little bit, maybe, I don't know. Mayor's aide is actually a good one. I wouldn't want to merge, as we've done here, sword bearer and mayor's aide. If that person facilitates both roles at some point, that's absolutely fine, not a problem. But we need to have two separate areas, just as the civic officer is the all-encompassing person in terms of the knowledge, the induction of new mayors, etc., etc. So, mayor's aide, I'm happy with mayor's aide.
So, in that case, the proposal is that we amend that hierarchy to have town crier, sword bearer, mace bearer, and mayor's aide, and that you guys explore the most appropriate way. I think that 0 hours contract element is probably the best way forward in terms of sessional. You've already mentioned that in those terms. Does that give you a clear enough steer to go forward? So that is the proposal. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Gray. All those in favour? Thank you all very, very much, and thank you very much for your time. So we move on to 14721, community engagement, to discuss and agree on the consultation on media release required. Yes.
It's not really right, I don't know whether you can answer it, and obviously it is a community engagement. When I was giving that
Good question, well asked.
No,
Honorary citizens.
So can I just say committee officers update?
Oh, sorry.
None, thank you.
I've
Community.
got a different one.
Oh, have you? Oh, sorry. Well, my
That's all right.
slides on then. Community engagement. Actually, I think that's a really valid point. We have been struggling in terms of good old COVID again. As we were hoping that we would have the mayor's civic reception fairly early. And I know Kerry and Mike have a regular meeting, but that's not been able. So we were going to bring in last year's civic recipient, Honour Civic Citizens Awards recipients, as well as this year's, because we felt that they weren't really, no disrespect to Jane and Mark Robinson who conducted that event. We did the best we could in the circumstances, but we always said we wanted to actually make a bigger thing of it. Unfortunately, the mayor's civic reception has been pushed off a bit, so we're trying to find an event where we don't, where we can really, honour those two individuals that have been awarded it. So at this moment in time, I can't tell you which event, but we are really searching for it.
Councillor Brown.
I'm just wondering, how do you guys know how to do it? Or that, what's going to happen? Some form of protection as well. That might be those where people actually invite and do the test. So, last this year, there will be a church coming to there. Obviously, the mayor's going to be there, and we could plan something. It was great that we're going to have a civic reception and you get people there, and there are people who make the good at the town. That might be an ideal place that we can do it in September, not going to get too into the long grass. We know that it's something that we do well. Just as an idea, it might be a place to.
Given that you've just made an officer smile, he's one that's a good idea, I think that
That's
might
as good
happen.
as you're going to get as a smile.
Councillor Cannon, please.
Whatever event, you've got to remember these two working people.
It's Sunday.
What is the calendar?
Yes, but you don't give up your job for the care post, if you work 2 days a week sometimes. But it's just that, so that they're in their 20s, and then I suppose they're all in their own.
You can give them as much notice as possible.
And we're going to call in last year's as well. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll get Kerry to send that invitation out by the end of the week. So.
Anything else from community engagement, apart from the creative recruitment that the team are getting time to do? No, in that case, thank you all very, very much for your time. As the committee officer has said, there's no further updates. Again, I think we have to suspend standing orders because we've just finished just before 2 hours. I'd had it out ready to vote in. So thank you all very, very much for your time.